Well, I think we could just go home now, right? That was the perfect sermon. Thank you. And I felt like she had snuck into my heart and knew the worries of my heart with those words. I hope that you felt how the Spirit can witness and minister to us through music. So thank you. And that is not my spiritual gift. So in the next life, I'm asking for your voice. Sorry. You had it this whole time. You don't need it in the eternities. Okay, good. Glad we just worked that out now, and you're all my witnesses. So grateful to be with you here in this beautiful setting, and I just am in awe of what the women of our church can do to make a party happen. We know how to throw a party with 3D cut cookies, right? And lights and flowers and signage and music and so many little hands and decisions and meetings to make these events happen. And as I was sitting up here, I was pondering on all this doing that we do, right, in the church. And sometimes it feels like, what is it all for, right? We move on to the next calling, our kids move out and they don't want to stay in the church, and the weeds still come and the laundry's still there, and it's a lot of doing. And as I was sitting here thinking about, because of the power of gathering, it's worth the doing. We need each other. And more than ever, after this last week, I needed to be with you today. The headlines this week have been heavy. And I think I'm just of the age that I probably say that every day now. Because I'm 50, you know. But I have felt this week more than ever that as much as my heart feels weary, and as much as we need to do what this song just invited us to do, to be still, there's another part of my soul that is rejoicing because I see prophecy being fulfilled. Which means, as hard as this week has been, and as hard as the weeks will be, we're one day closer to the Savior coming again. So I'm just doing a little survey. Who's ready? You better put your hands up high. I didn't say who's perfect, I said who's ready. Okay. See, I think so often we come to events like this and we come home with sometimes long lists of things we need to work on and change. And I love this theme. This theme is about belonging first and foremost. And the idea of becoming, God is not stressed out. We are, but He's not. He's not like, oh, if my daughters would just figure it out and do their ministering better and do Come Follow Me better and go to the temple better and do indexing better and learn how to make sourdough bread during the pandemic, then I could really get behind them and I could love them and then Jesus could come. No, He's not panicked, because think of what we get to accomplish in 1,000 years of the millennium. Never mind eternity of progression. But I don't know about you, I get very impatient with myself and then the people I birthed. Those are the people I get the most. And then when I married. Those are all the rest of you, I'm totally fine with you. And you're all works in progress, and I'm cheering you on like, good job, you're amazing. Yep, you messed up, repent, it's fine. If I birthed you or I'm sealed to you, I'm in trouble. Because then I'm in a ton of judgment, right? And panic and worry. And I currently have a 23-year-old son who lives in Hawaii on a little island. And as of a few days ago is now out of a job. And I have a daughter who is a senior. I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to talk about it. I really, really don't. That's it. In the church, they let you come to church with 2 kids. And I'm proof of that. And I've been president of various organizations. They let you do that too with only 2 kids. No, people are always like, so where are your other kids? I'm like, well, we hide them in the closet. We pull them out for holidays so the picture looks better. Yeah. I wasn't supposed to have any children, and so 2 is a ton, you know, and it took 7 years to have my son, which in Mormon years is 2,722 years. And then it took 6 years to have my daughter, and people are always like, oh, there's a very big gap between them. What are you going to do about that? Nothing. Doing nothing about that. They love each other a lot, freakishly a lot. And it's strange to be entering in to this last year of my daughter being in the home, whatever that looks like in the future. Parenting adult children is no joke. Can I get an amen? Sheesh. They need to do more Relief Society lessons about that. I used to think it was like potty training. That was my big stress. And were they going to sleep through the night and not get out of the crib and take their pajamas off, right? And then I entered the phase of like teaching them to read. That was the stress, right? And there was this little list in my head, like if I could get them to these next covenants, then I could breathe and take a good nap. No! Now they don't live at your house, and you can't have a family home evening lesson about it. You can't fix it. I live in a ward with more youngs than olds, and we're kind of in this middle straddle where the empty nesters invite us to stuff, but they have a ton of grandchildren, and I have 0, and I want one, you know. And then the teenage families, you know, my last one is, that's it. And so we're in this little weird spot. And I always joke that I need women in Relief Society that are ahead of me in the trail. And I'm looking out at some women that could give me some good advice today. So the deal with speaking, I've done about 1,800 keynotes in 7 years. And it is a spiritual dance for me. So I'll prep, I take the theme, I don't give the same talk, and then we just see where this goes, which is exciting. But I always have to preface it because I will stop in the middle of a sentence and switch because the Spirit will be like, the lady in the back, she is so bored with what you're saying, and her husband just left her. So you need to go in a totally different direction, and I will. So if you feel like I'm schizophrenic, I'm not. If I was, I would disclose it. And we're going to just have a really spiritual dance here. Now, if you were in my home, in my room, wearing pajamas, which is what we want to do on a Saturday morning, we could have a really good conversation. Okay? But what's great about the Spirit is we get to do that right now. If you bring to heart right now the things that are your top worries, if you bring into your mind the things that you wish God would fix, if you bring into your heart and mind the things you have fasted and prayed and gone to therapy about so much you're sick of it, that's where I want you to be. Because that's where we get to spiritually dance. And I don't have a lot of spiritual gifts, but that one is one that I have come to develop and love. And it's sacred for me to be in this space with you because every time God shows me how much He loves His children, but He especially loves His daughters. No offense, President. I always pick on the one token man. He's been warned. So if he starts cussing me out behind me, would you guys do a signal like just touch your nose? I promise I won't. Oh, he's going to be good. Sometimes they start sweating and like, did we get approval for her to come? Did you call her stake president? You know. I love this theme, and so I'm going to break what my thoughts are into two, the belonging and the becoming part. First, we're going to go with belonging, because I have come to understand more than ever after this last year that there's a difference between fitting in and belonging. I tell teenagers when I speak in the high schools, stop trying to fit in. Like, what if you went to school with a whole bunch of bank robbers? I mean, do you really want to fit in with those guys? Right? Sometimes we think that if we don't have the same wreath on our doors from the Relief Society activity. There was a moment one day driving through my neighborhood, I was like, did I not get invited to a church activity? Because everyone has the same wreath, and I didn't get the memo on that. You know, we start to think that if we don't all have the same interests and we don't all dress the same and we don't all have the same colored door, that somehow we don't belong to each other. And for me, diversity is divinity. Let me say that again. Diversity is divinity. Zion is not going to be all the same people doing all the same things. Boring. I am so good at vacuuming. Heads up. There better be carpet where we are going. because I can talk you to death and vacuum. Those are my gifts. That's what I got, But there's women in my ward that like magically do these cakes that I'm like, what are you doing with that frosting? And they can do hair like nobody's business. God gave me 2 children with naturally curly hair because God was like, she doesn't know how to do hair very well. And my husband doesn't have curly hair, and I don't have curly hair, so there's really rude jokes my children make about me not being faithful, and I was faithful. But they think that I had an affair somehow because they have really curly hair. I mean, really, really, really curly hair. My husband and I don't at all. And I always joke like God just totally got it that my daughter was going to have Pinterest and hair videos. And I didn't need to have that gift. But I see these women come to church with their kids and their hair are like works of art. The braids that turn into the Eiffel Tower. I don't know how to do that. I mean, I showered for you guys today, so I hope you're feeling special. Because everyone who saw me at Target yesterday, I was not showered, So my point is that if we're sitting in events like this and we go to all these breakout workshop classes and we start to believe in a culture that means that we're all the same, I think we have already stopped the belonging path. Belonging is about Zion, and Zion is about diversity, and diversity is about knowing each other's heart and minds. And I hope your heart and mind is different than mine, because I'm counting on your cake baking and your hair doing skills. When we have Zion, I will do the vacuuming. Are we good? And you will sing, okay? As I've talked about unity and Zion over the last few years, I've really come to understand that when the home teaching and visiting teaching program changed, we are all like, oh good, finally, by the way. That was long past due. And then we were like, wait, what? What's ministering mean, right? And so I go back to the fact that to minister is to know what's in each other's heart and mind. It was just a change so we would know. I also think it's prophetic because God knew that through the prophet that program was going to change right before the whole world shut down. So ministering could be what? A text. COVID friendly, right? Last night, I've been ministering to a sister in my ward for 7 years, and I jokingly say we had a special temple ceiling. We didn't. I'm not trying to teach false doctrine, okay? But she didn't really love having visiting teachers. And when they first assigned me to her, she was so cute. She came out to me and she's like, yeah, so I'm fine. You don't need to come. And I was all, oh, that's so cute. Let me introduce myself. I will stalk you. No. It's true. It's true. So she finally just gave into it. She was like, you're not going anywhere, are you? And I'm like, nope. Her first child is going to college today. They're driving her to college. And so last night I walked down unshowered. I'm not joking about that. No shower yesterday. Went to a birthday party at the neighbor's, Target, and visited this family, completely unshowered. Deodorant, no shower, okay? And brought a little treat for this cute girl that I've known forever and is going to college. And we sat and talked as a family. It didn't check the box of teaching a lesson. We testified. We talked about what was worrying on our hearts. I'm not the greatest minister. I'm just saying to you that as I sat there, I thought, oh, I'm so glad this is what the program's supposed to feel like. Like, what's in her heart and mind? She's sending her baby to college today. You know? What's on my heart and mind? I'm worried about my kid that's unemployed living on an island in Hawaii. You know? And then everything in between. And we sat and shared. So my invitation to you is, we need each other. We need belonging. But we need to stop thinking that means we're all going to have the same hobbies and like everything the same and vote the same and look the same. And it also doesn't need to check boxes. What are the ways in which you can know the people in your space, whatever that is? Maybe that's someone you're assigned to, but maybe it's just someone you're sitting by right now. What's in their heart and mind? And then the job is back on you. Because we need to stop with this. Hey, how you doing? Fine. You're doing fine? Yeah, I'm fine. Everything's fine. I'm fine. We are not fine. Who's fine in here? Anyone fine? You can come up and speak. Tell us how come you're so fine. I mean, you're beautiful. That's not what I mean. I'm saying to you, we all have worries on our hearts. And if we're really going to build Zion, we need to stop being the ones that are so cagey. And everyone's having to get out a big old shovel to dig through the wall to find out how you're doing. So it's a two-way street. If we're not feeling connection and we're not feeling a belonging, what are you doing to block that? I love when I speak and write and host shows, I love to talk about scripture stories. It may be boring. I have a bias. It's a Jesus bias. I was telling a friend that this week. I'm like, everybody has a bias. Everyone's got an agenda. Me too. She's like, what's yours? I'm like, Jesus. So my new hashtag is #JesusBias. So my thought is that the scriptures are not filled with one example of the perfect family. I've looked. God didn't use one page, not one paragraph, not one verse, not one chapter. He didn't even waste his time. We spend a lot of time trying to be that, though. We do a lot of doing instead of being and becoming, because we're sure there's a secret sauce, a recipe. If we could just figure it out, it must be on Pinterest. And if we do it and check all the boxes, then we will have the perfect family. I've looked. There's no such thing. And so what I found in the scriptures instead is a whole bunch of real families and real people doing real stuff and struggling. So today, I want to share with you my perception of these scripture stories, because I believe if God didn't waste time and he put these examples in the scriptures, it's because he knew exactly what we were going to need in 2021. It's our job to figure out through the cultural differences and the language barrier of a Bible or Book of Mormon or Doctrine and Covenants story, how it relates to what's happening when we go to Target. That's on us. So one of my favorite stories is that of Ruth and Naomi. If we're going to talk about belonging, let's go there. Mother-in-laws. I know, you're all perfect mother-in-laws. It's fine. That's why you were invited today. The bad ones had to stay home. Now, I'm not a mother-in-law yet, but I've already told my children when there's only 2 kids in the family, I told them when they could talk, I will love whoever you marry. I've already decided it. Because, let's be honest, you can't hide the bad in-laws when you only got 2 kids, right? Those bigger families, you're like, well, those are the in-laws we don't really get along with. But these ones blend in, and we just don't have to deal with them so much. No, when my son's dating, he brings someone home, it's obvious. We go from 4 to 5, and everyone knows it, you know? And so I think, let's just be honest, that relationships and families are complicated. I think God's made that very clear from day one, Adam and Eve. 2 kids, 1 boy kills the other. I think from the gate, we know we've got a problem. Families are going to be challenging. Okay? So if you look at Ruth and Naomi, let's break it down. They're refugees. Our country is welcoming some refugees. My sisters and my mom and dad live in Houston, and they just got their first families. They put apartments together for Afghan families that have been evacuated. And so we can kind of relate to that, right? Like, we see on the news what it must feel like to be a refugee. So that's Ruth and Naomi. And they're grieving. They've lost husbands and children. And there's this moment where you can almost see they're sitting in Relief Society, right? How you doing? Fine, right? There's almost that moment in Ruth and Naomi's story, right? Where they could have chosen to say, I'm fine, and departed. Instead, they chose to stay together. And they chose to stay together when they were not their best. It is said that their friends didn't recognize them because the grief was so obvious on their face. The week that they found my sister, I had new headshots taken, but we hadn't found her yet. She was already gone, but I could feel something was wrong that whole week. And she lived in California and I lived in Utah. But I have those pictures, those headshots. Every other picture since then, I can see the grief on my face. I can see it. And that's Ruth and Naomi. They were grieving. And I think if you were to describe the worst life situation, they checked most of the boxes. Unemployed, refugees, grieving, bad. Not a lot in common. Probably not BFFs. Didn't share the same religion and stayed together. So I think they invite us to see what belonging can look like. even when there's some perceived barriers of personality or culture. And they stay together. And what I love, I just did a post about this on social media about waiting and the power of waiting. And so I loved the song because it really was an invitation to sit and wait. This moment when they took the worst job in the field, which is picking up the extras, and then Ruth is instructed to sit at the feet of Boaz. Now, I was pleading with the Lord this week about some things that I really, as a mama, you know mama prayers, right? Grandma prayers, aunt prayers. There's something about those kind of prayers for someone that you love and you worry about and you've invested in. It was that kind of prayer. And the Lord sent me to this verse in the book of Ruth, and it was about Ruth sitting at the feet of Boaz waiting. And I was like, you want me to wait? That's not doing anything. And the Spirit is so cute with me. Yes, it is. Waiting is doing something. So as Ruth is sitting there waiting with all this grief and all this loss, and probably not thinking she's living her best life, and living with her mother-in-law, okay? Eventually there's a marriage. In that waiting, there came a marriage. In that waiting came a baby. And from that baby came another baby. And from that baby came another baby to the King of David, and then the Savior of the world. That line, that waiting, that loss, that grief, that togetherness opened the door for miracles. So often when we're in that place, remember what I invited you to do at the beginning of this, is to bring that thing to your heart, that thing that you've gone to every doctor, read every blog post, tried every exercise, medication, therapist, and you still don't have the answers. That space right there is where we have the sacred invitation of waiting. And I believe the story of Ruth and Naomi is not only a story of belonging, but it's a story of what happens when we stay together. God can work a miracle quicker. The animals of the animal kingdom totally get this. They travel in herds and packs. It's us that are like, I'm not doing well, so please leave me alone. Right? And teenagers do this really well. They're always like, stay away, come close, stay away, come close, right? So confusing, right? But all of us in here are a little bit still junior high in our heads, right? Especially we come to events, who am I going to sit by? Who am I going to talk to, right? We all have a little junior high still playing in our heads. Only me? Oh, good. So my invitation is we consider the weariness of each other. It may look fine because we showered and put on a cute dress. But can we just assume that at some level we're refugees, we're grieving, we feel out of place, we feel lost, we feel like we have the lamest job, and we're waiting? That connection and belonging, that unity of Zion comes when we start to hold space for each other's hearts and minds. And that awareness. Just this weekend on Saturday, my husband and I got an appointment to do an endowment session in the Jordan River Temple. And my son had come home for a quick visit, and my daughter and he were going to go out to a nice fancy dinner because that's just how freakishly close they are. Remember that 6-year gap? I guess it's fine. And we live in Lehi, which is code for constant wind. That's all. I think Lehi, the Greek meaning of it is windy. I think that's what it means. And we're not talking little wind. We're like 50-mile-an-hour winds. So we have this pergola that is made out of metal. And our table that sits 10 was blown into one of the poles of the pergola and completely dented it. And we don't know this is happening. We're in the temple, right? And I come out, and it looks like on my phone there's that notification that we lost Wi-Fi at home. But I thought, oh, I don't know what that's about, right? And then we decided to go to dinner because we don't have 3-year-olds at home. It's fine. We get to take our time coming home. And I thought, don't call and check on them. They're fine. And finally that gnawing feeling, so I called. Well, it had been really a bad storm, and all the furniture in the backyard was blowing everywhere. My son, of course, no help at all. He's 6'7". He could have been helpful, but he was in the shower. He didn't even know. The electricity had gone out, and all the furniture's blowing everywhere. My cute little girl's in the back trying to grab all the couches and chairs, and right? And the neighbor behind us sees her and puts a ladder over the fence and climbs over and helps her. The bottom of the tables had broken, and the bottom of the couches outside had broken. I mean, it was severe. And I was just so grateful. Well, and then this is the other thing. Side note, it has nothing to do with it, and this is not spirit directed. We have emergency equipment in the house. Like, we have lamps that are those lanterns that are LED in every corner of the house. So when I call, my kids are like, we lost electricity and a bad windstorm. And I'm like, okay, well, and we got the lights down. I said, okay, what do you mean you got the lights down? Because literally every drawer in the house has some emergency flashlight. They went and got those little string LED lights that you use for party. What? She's like, we spread it out on the back of the couch. And I was like, okay, obviously we need to do a little emergency preparedness training. We have missed the boat. I said, so when you had to dig in the cupboard past all the other lanterns and flashlights, what were you thinking? She's like, well, we just wanted the yellow ones, and they're pretty. I mean, they don't light anything up, right? You just put them on the center of the table with like the flowers to make it look, it gave no light, 0 light. I said, okay, whatever. So I sat there and thought, here we were in the temple and we could not reach our kids. And this neighbor reached our kids. Well, I found out the next day he helped 3 other neighbors that the garage door wouldn't open because of electricity, one where a tree had fallen down, one where a barbecue had literally lifted up and gone into another yard. I mean, that was bad. And I told him, I yelled over the fence just yesterday, Jaron. He's like, no. And I said, no, see, that's Zion. This is what Zion is. Now, I believe that there are moments where God doesn't send the neighbor over the fence with the ladder. And it can start to feel like, what about me? Where's my Naomi? Where's my Ruth? Where's my neighbor that has a ladder? Did you forget about me, God? In those moments, I believe He sends His Spirit. So I invite you to consider that in your weariness and in your fight and in that sense and need of belonging, that when you feel the loneliest, when you feel like no one sees you, there is a God that always sees. His eyes are always on you. He knows the storms that are whipping your life into a frenzy. And once again, the song that has already been shared is a sermon that is perfect. That's when we stop. And in the center of the storm is where it's calm. And that stillness is where He can send His grace, His love, and His peace. If you can't find that center, then find good music. Good praise music can center me in that space better than anything else. Because our vocalist isn't willing to go home with all of us. I found out she has a life. Her family needs her, right? So thank goodness that we have that opportunity. I'm going to give you another invitation. In the book of in the book of Alma, we hear of Helaman and the stripling warriors. And there's a really tired army. And Helaman brings his 2,000 boys that, according to artwork, look like they're CrossFit models. Do you know what stripling means? I write about it in one of my booklets, Mother to Mother. It's like the 16, 17-year-old acne face boys. They are not, okay? And the other thing I write about in this booklet is we think somehow because their mothers knew it, that they had the best come follow me lessons every week, right? That they were all returned missionaries married in the temple. These were the recovering addicts. Their mothers knew it because their mothers had faced some stuff. So this story of Helaman bringing these boys, he comes to rescue another army that is so weary. So I'm going to give you an invitation if you're taking notes. I want you to identify. Okay, in my dreamland, you're all going to identify 5 names, but I already can hear you say, no, I don't know 5 people. Okay, so we're going to go to 3, and if you're still like, there's no way I can identify 3, I want you to identify 1 name. These people, 5 to 3 to 1, ideally 5, and I'm going to tell you why, are your new faith friends. They're your SOS friends, whatever you like to call them. Okay? And you're going to text them some point today before you go to bed, and you're going to blame me. You're going to say, this lady came to speak to our stake. She's got a really weird name. We haven't talked about that, have you? Okay, let's talk about that later. Okay, you're going to blame me, and you're going to say, she invited me to identify 5 faith friends. Now, why 5? Because you will talk yourself out of 3. She just had surgery. She's going through divorce. He just lost his job. So I like 5 because it's a buffer. If you can only think of 3, they are not going to be, just like with Ruth and Naomi, your bestest friends that you go on vacation with, that you share everything in common with. These are the people that you know that have lived through the 50-mile-an-hour storms where the furniture's flying all over and breaking. And you've watched them get up and work on their faith. They don't have every box checked, but they've made it through some storms. And you're going to text them this. You're going to say, listen, I was at this conference today. This lady, I can't remember her name. Sounds like a foot disease. It's not, by the way, but it sounds like one. Because, junior high is fun. And having my name made it even more fun. And you're going to say, she invited me to identify a faith friend, an SOS friend. I will be yours if you will be mine. Belonging is a two-way street. So I'm inviting you to identify these people, because you're going to say, if ever you need an SOS, if you need to hear a testimony of some sort, if you need someone to just talk about gibberish, I'm your person. Will you be that for me? We need each other. And the reason you're going to text them today before you go to bed, or call them, or email them, whatever way, if smoke signal's your favorite way of communicating, just communicate to them that, because today I'm assuming we're all here, we're not in crisis. We're not in the crisis center. We are in this great chapel with good food waiting. So right now we're all a little sane for a moment. That's when we tell these people, I am going to reach out to you when it's so dark. The light is gone almost. And I will be there to turn up the light for you when it's too dark for you. Deal? We define who those SOS faith friends are before we need them. And then we use them. It's going to be scary. That's why I'm saying 5. You will talk yourself out of the first 3. I invite you to consider that belonging starts with you creating Zion in unity, wherever your space is. Next, belonging starts with making space for wherever we're at in our faith. I don't think there's a family right now on the planet that cannot tell a story of a faith crisis happening to someone they love. And I know some people don't like that phrase. They don't like the phrase faith crisis. I've tried other ways to define it. But what I would say is, can we talk about faith spectrums? Can we make space for not the absolutes? Because these gatherings, I hope you are a group that includes people that are not so sure any of this is true. That's my favorite. My favorite place to speak is the prisons. I'm not kidding. I'd go there every week if they let me. I mean, let me tell you, the prison is prison. It's not like, oh, that's how they play it on TV. In real life, it's really that way. But the reason I love to speak at those events is because those inmates, when they come to our devotionals in the prison, no one's making them. And that list, that worry of your heart that I invited you to have, their lists are long. When we have broken hearts and contrite spirits, the Spirit can have a party. When I speak to groups where they've got it all figured out, I am sweating up here. Because the walls are like perfectly designed with hole painting and wreaths, and I can't even get through them. And the Spirit's like, they won't open their hearts. Sorry, you did the best you could. I'm using my best stuff here. So my invitation is, we should be having gatherings like this that include the spectrum of faith. Statistically speaking, this church is filled with more singles. So when we gather like this, can we just assume that not everyone has the check every box perfect family? And listen, there's days I want to be single. My husband and daughter were at a conference for 3 days. The house was so clean. I kept walking in the kitchen like, nothing to do in there. I don't even know. The dog's like, what's up with us? And I'm like, I don't know. You want to read a book? I don't know. But I understand. My mother-in-law has been widowed for 15, 16 years, and it's lonely. There's no joke in loneliness. And you can be filled in a room like this and still feel lonely. You can sit in a room like this and think, everyone around me has a testimony. I don't even know how I feel about it. I'm not sure I've heard God for weeks, months, or years. And I read something about Joseph Smith. Have you been on Google? And the headlines. And I'm going to say this, and if I show up on YouTube with a clip me saying this, I know it came from Pocatello. I will be back. I used to say, and when I spoke, I would often say, if Elder Holland says it. Elder Holland kept me alive 6 months after Meg died by suicide. I only listened to Elder Holland talk. Because every time he opened his mouth, all I felt was love. And I used to say to people, when we are seeing the great fall, or we're struggling with our faith, or we're questioning things, is your faith grounded in Jesus Christ? Because everything else is the weeds and white noise. And I would jokingly somewhat say, if Elder Holland stood up one day and said, none of it's true, where would your faith be? And every time I would give that example, the whole audience would go green. What do you mean? I'm like, he's not gonna, but that's where I check myself. Where is my faith? Is it in Jesus Christ? Are my covenants pointing me back to Him? Because this church organization is an organization, and it's filled with its own unique culture. But I'm here for one reason only, because this is where my covenants are. End of story. Those covenants lead me to Christ. They bind me to Christ, and I'm not willing to walk away from that. My heart has broken this week for those that have been triggered and struggled, but my heart has also broken because we're living in a time where Elder Holland, who's, for me, someone that has kept my soul alive with his words, has been vilified. And if you know me, you know my activation within the LGBTQ community. My role in Building Zion is just like yours, which is to hold space for those that may feel marginalized and alone and empty and sad. But that's all of us. There's not a separate group. There are groups that are feeling the challenge of life more specifically right now, in certain ways, and that takes more love, more understanding, and more patience. But I don't want to live in a world where those that are willing to stand up and speak and lead can be taken down so quickly. It's hard out there right now to hold space for the conversations that need to be had. I don't have the secret sauce, but I love to have them. I host a show called The Middle, and it's really designed to have the awkward conversations. Because I think the more we have them, the less awkward they feel. But one of the things I get asked all the time is like, how do I talk to my friend that's going through a faith crisis? Or how do I talk to my friend that identifies in this group? Or how do I talk to my friend of color that is really struggling with race issues? I say, stop talking. Just say, I want to make time and space to talk about whatever you want to talk about, because I want to understand. The other thing I love to suggest saying is, how can I best support you? Isn't that a magic phrase? We spend so much time trying to guess. I don't know what to do. She just lost her child. I don't know what to do. They just lost their job. I don't know what to do. She's going through depression. I don't know what to do. Her son just came out. I don't know what to do. They don't want to be at church anymore. So one of the things I love to say is, why don't we just show up in some way and say, how can I best support you? What does support look like for you? It may look different than it does for me. I love it when people Marco Polo me, because when I'm busy in the car, I can talk to them back. If you don't know about that free app, go check it out. Okay? I don't love texting. There's no emotion there, and I'm not great at it, and I don't always auto-check the spelling. I may have sent some problematic texts in the past. Please forgive me. I love to go outside and weed in my garden and see my neighbor over the fence, and we talk. Sometimes just being seen that way is what support I need that day. So, my invitation is, can we make space for the spectrum of experiences we're all having? Remember, diversity is divinity. And I want a Zion that includes my brothers and sisters of all race, all sexual identity. Because I have come to understand more of Jesus because of my conversations with them. I love that Joseph Smith has taught us this. As a young boy, he went to a grove of trees with a question, a lot of questions. He didn't leave that grove with all the questions answered. And what if he had gotten all mad, like, seriously, I showed up and prayed. I even did hand-to-hand combat with Satan, and he doesn't even have hands. Are y'all awake now? I know you've been in workshops all day. Okay, get it? Not Voldemort, but he has no hands. And then angels came, and God the Father and Son. And by the way, I've read 5 versions of that. And that's hard for some people to understand. But when Joseph left that grove that day, it was sacred only because he had done the combat with the dark side first. He didn't leave with every question answered, and neither will we have them all answered. He was inviting us never to just take his sacred grove experience to be, that's it. He was constantly inviting others to have their own sacred grove experience. I am going to invite us to consider, not only do we hold space for each other to have a spectrum of experiences that are diverse and different from us, that love is really just saying, what does support look like for you? But the next testimony meeting we have, could we possibly stand up and say, I hope or I believe? Is there certain parts of the gospel that you can't say I know yet? And is that okay? Can we have conversations with our family and our friends to say, I hold space for that, and that's okay? I've come to understand that when we speak truth, the Spirit can witness that. So when we stand up and say, I hope this, I believe this, but I know this, the Spirit witnesses to all 3 of those things. Because let's really break down what faith is. It isn't knowing anything. It is hoping and believing without the evidence. So if we really are a faith-focused people, is it okay that we don't all know everything? I hope so. I hope we're having different conversations in our Sunday lessons where those that are sitting in the chairs go, I don't fit this mold and I don't have all the answers, but I still want to be here. Because when I'm here, I belong. This is my community, and they are okay with me not knowing everything. They're okay with me saying the crazy stuff. We had a testimony meeting a few months ago, and a brother in our ward who is just awesome, I love him, he stood up and said, I've been in a faith crisis the last 3 years, and I think half the ward was like, what? He said, I'm struggling with some church history stuff, but guess what I know for sure? And he bore testimony of the Book of Mormon. He said, I know that book is true, and I have evidence of it in my life. What a hopeful testimony, and permission for everyone in our ward to say, oh, no one exploded when he just said that. The roof did not come in and the bishop didn't yank him down from the mic. That must mean I can show up here every Sunday too with my questions. Can we do that? Can we foster a faith journey within our families, within our communities, within our wards? Because it's going to keep getting dicey, right? We already know that. And there are going to be more talks that trigger us. Maybe this wasn't the week you got triggered, but someone you love was. Someone you love was triggered this week by something. Probably 5 things. Because that's how it's been the last 18 months, right? We all have a lot of good opinions about everything, and we know the answer. Just call me. Now let's talk about becoming. Are we good there? Do we need to take a deep breath? That was a lot. I threw all the stuff out. But I'm serious about this, because if we don't have these conversations, Google will have them with you. And social media will tell you what to think. And I just think, why are we wasting our time coming to church if we're not going to help each other on our faith stuff? If we're not going to talk about unity and what's really going on in our families? If we're going to act like everything's fine, then, we could get a lot of other stuff done on a Sunday. Or a Saturday. I mean, what kind of church makes you come here on a Saturday? One that gives you special cookies, okay? It's going to be awesome. So let's talk about becoming. Because they go very hand in hand. This idea of belonging is that all of us in here are work in progress. All of us have messed up. All of us have offended someone today. I've probably offended all of you at least 5 times already. Okay? And so isn't it cool that God's like, and guess what? You all get to go be in families and work together and go to church with people that are imperfect. Yay! We rejoiced at that family gathering when God was like, acne, arthritis, and anxiety. See how I like alliteration there. We got excited because another A word, the atonement. We got excited because we knew that this becoming process was going to be messy. And we rejoiced because we knew that by having the gift of a body, we could become quicker. So, as my bio shared, 7 years ago, I lost my 40-year-old sister to suicide. There is nothing funny about suicide. I do have some suicide jokes, but I can only say them in certain companies. Because honestly, I have to laugh or else sometimes I will just stop. There is something to be said about grief in general. And I have lost another sister, so both my sisters are buried by each other. I've lost my grandparents. I held my grandma in bed when she died. She was my dearest, bestest friend. My father-in-law died of MS. So I've grieved. But suicide grief is a unique grief. It leaves a whole bunch of what-ifs behind. And so I, as the big sister, who else is the oldest here? Oh, good. Raise your hand high so everyone knows where to come for the right answer. Right? If they would just listen to us. I've been trying to tell them all what to do my whole life. And in all seriousness, I felt like my mom was my baby and my sister was my baby. And as the oldest, I was in charge. My mother, bless her heart, has dealt with mental health issues her whole entire life. Severe. So my worst fear was losing Meg or my mom to suicide. And there was a real great possibility for both, and there still is. Just last week. So I talk about this all the time, everywhere I go. And so please don't assume that because I talk about it so openly that I don't still feel the raw grief of it. But I have come to understand after 1,800 keynotes and countless interviews and TV and all the things in the last 7 years, every single one of us in this room and who can hear me speaking right now, every single one of us deals with mental health issues. That's everybody. We need to stop acting like it's this other group over there. Like, you're in ward council and you're like, okay, I felt this happen when they announced ministering. I was like, oh, cute. All the ward councils are like, we got to get a list. Got to get a list on Sunday of all the people that we need to minister to. And then we need to make another list of all the ministers that are going to fix all the ministering problems. It's the same list. We all need ministering and we all minister. The helpers need the help more than ever. So after all the speaking, I would say that all of us fall into either this category of we struggle with mental health issues. Depression, anxiety, OCD, addiction, suicidal ideation. Then there's another group of we love someone that struggles. That's everybody on the planet. That's literally everyone on the planet. Then there's a third group, those of us that have lost someone to suicide. Some of us fall into all three categories. After the last year and a half, there is not one person that should be thinking, I don't think I need to worry about mental health. I don't know what pandemic you lived through, but the belonging part got a big hit. Never mind, a few political races. a few other debates, and job loss, and health crisis. We're tired. And my opinion is that the pandemic isn't just about the pandemic. It's not really even about the pandemic. God is trying to see, will we become Zion? Instead of that, I see a lot of division. We have become ites. I think Satan's been on vacation for a year and a half. I think he was at Disneyland when it got shut down. He was just hanging out there because he's like, no one's here anyways. And they're all mad at each other, and they're all destroying each other, so I don't even have to show up for work anymore. I want him to have to work a little harder. So as we talk about feeling enough, when my sister passed, it broke open inside of me the grief that I didn't really know I could feel. It was a crazy what-if grief. And so I combed the scriptures for scriptural examples that could help me understand and frame mental health in a different way. Because mental health is all of us. It's all of us. I'm still so sad when people are like, I don't want anyone to know I'm going to therapy. Why? You should be tweeting about it. You should be so proud of yourself. Because to me, therapy is like education for my mind and my relationships. No one's embarrassed about getting more degrees. No one's like, oh, sorry, I don't want to tell anyone I'm getting another PhD. I know. Education, it's so embarrassing. I'm calling you guys out on this because mental health and therapy is a broad term. It's education for your soul and your relationships in your mind. We should be celebrating each other. So I combed the scriptures, and the story that has resonated the most last 7 years is the woman with the issue of blood. If you've watched my Hope Works talk, you know when I talked about her. Because she is who I want to have lunch with. Pretty soon after, a few other people I want to meet. But she's on the top 5. Because let's think about her for a minute, okay? Can you imagine her? If she was invited to a women's conference, she'd be having to watch remotely. Because in her culture, a blood issue meant she wasn't with other people. She had to stay away. She couldn't prepare food. And what we know from the scriptures is that everything she tried, she got worse. Everything she tried, she got worse. For 13 years. I have come to understand that all of us have an issue of blood. For you, it may be chronic illness. For you, it may be addiction, depression, anxiety, learning disability, eating disorder, loneliness, or something in the middle. But we all have that thing, that one thing that you're like, God, can't you send a miracle in this? Because I saw you did it for my neighbor. She posted on social media about it. And then that lady in church got up and she's like, we prayed and fasted, and in 2 weeks we had a miracle. And you're just like, seriously? Am I the only one at church saying that sometimes? Like, I'm so glad you got your miracle in 2 weeks. 22 years over here, And so she would not be here with us. And part of the problem with the issues of blood that we deal with is that sometimes we see the miracle goes to someone else, and so that adds to that lack of belonging. So in our process of becoming, we start to believe we're not enough. God must not love us enough. He doesn't want to talk to us enough. We don't have enough faith. And we go to that doctor. We try that diet. We go to that therapist. We read that book. We use the oils. Listen, full disclosure, I'm a user, not a dealer. I'm not trying to sell you. But if you hug me, you will smell them on me. I'm a big fan of all the tools in the toolbox. And so she was tired. What made her try one more thing that day? Did she look at Yelp and get a review? Like, that Jesus, he's been doing some good stuff. You should try it. Because all of us get to that place where we're like, there's no hope. When she went to the road that day and reached for the Savior, she touched his hem. The thread, in some translations say. Only the thread. I don't know about you, but if Jesus is walking down the road, I'm doing full arms around the legs drag. I will not be letting go. I'll be the crazy lady. They're like, could you get her off? Because there's other people who want to talk to him. What I love, though, about this moment and the pattern with Joseph Smith in the Sacred Grove is an invitation to have an intimate relationship with Christ. He called her by name and said, "Woman, thy faith hath made thee whole." What faith? Messy 13 years of trying, everything not working, everybody else gets the miracle faith. I invite you to find your own sacred grove. That corner in your room where you're going to take your questions and your doubts and your issues of blood every morning and every night. And you may do hand-to-hand combat with doubt and darkness, because that's what made the grove sacred. Find a corner, a desk, a chair somewhere. That's been our big invitation this season on Real Talk, is to have our own sacred grove experiences. And maybe you're saying, I've tried, but I don't see God. Do you feel God? Can you hear God? Maybe you smell God. I do when pumpkin candles are burning. I'm pretty sure that's what this scent is going to be in heaven for me. Christmas music playing all year long. Reese's peanut butter cups will be actually the nutrition quality of broccoli and pumpkin spice candles. And maybe Tom Selleck. I'm just kidding. I'm going to say to you that woman helped me in the grief of Meg understand that depression and anxiety feels like that battle, that messy battle, that isolating battle, that battle that feels like you aren't enough to do one more day. My sister Meg is awesome. She's my mission companion. She's sometimes at meetings like this, so if you have that spiritual gift, in all seriousness, you may feel her. People are so cute, they come up after. I don't want to freak you out. I think Meg was it. Yep. See, I have the chance to speak what she can't say to you. So I'll spend the rest of my life saying this: we will never be better without you. Ever. There's not one of you here that's the extra kid. But God was like, listen, I don't know, I got an extra eyeball and a hand, we'll just make that kid, but they're the appendix, we don't know what they do. No, that's the adversary tricking you. See, he's jealous of you. You have family, faith, and bodies. He doesn't. He has no family, no faith, and no body, and so he attacks the things you have that he doesn't have. Do you get it? He's not creative. So I invite you to stay in your body. That beautiful, imperfect body that has arthritis, wrinkles, and acne. That's a joke, but it's serious in my life. 50 with acne. What? Because these bodies are glory. There is a glory of this body that allows you to progress. The becoming part comes through this vehicle. The spirit and the body together make the soul. And it is not perfect, but it is a glory that allows you to progress. And if you deal with depression and anxiety long-term like my sister did for most of her life, then you will struggle to sometimes feel the love of God get through that wall. You will sometimes struggle to feel the love people have for you through that wall. And you will get tired. When people ask me, why did she die? I say she got tired. She fought most of her life with learning disabilities, anxiety, depression, and abuse. But suicide is about one decision someone makes, not every decision they make. Isn't it great that we have the good news of the gospel? An eternal progression. But if she was here, she would share with you that she knows the moment she made the decision to pass that she had made a mistake. There's studies that prove this. Those that have jumped off the Golden Gate Bridge, it's a very small portion that survives, so please don't try it. I always have to say that at high schools because, you know. Right? Those that survive, 90% of them testify that they have more happiness now than they ever thought possible, and that the moment they jumped, they knew they had made a mistake. But in that moment, it's about pain control. So if you remember nothing else from today, I hope you remember to hear my voice, to stay in your body. My life is not better without Meg. Not all the shows, all the books, all the speaking. But I will spend the rest of my life talking about it in this way. Hope is a plan B. And I want you to have a big toolbox from this event today. I hope the Spirit has witnessed to you one more plan B, or C, or F, or you're at Z and you start the alphabet all over again. Hope is about the next plan B. And some of you in this room have been battling your issues of blood for so long and you're so tired, and I see you, but so does Jesus. And if he came today and sat by you in the pew, the first thing he would do is call you by name and tell you that he loves you. He would not give you the long list of ways you failed, the ways you keep messing up, the areas that you haven't cleaned out in your closet, and the food storage you haven't updated. He would say, I love you. And he would say, I see you. Woman, thy faith hath made thee whole. Every day I miss Meg. But every day I am renewed in the hope of Christ, who understands her pain and mine, and made it possible for all of us to progress. In closing, our prophet has asked us to let God prevail. I have a new little booklet out this last week that deals with this. This is not a book promotion, but I'm going to share with you that editing this little booklet was cumbersome, and it shouldn't have been. It's only like 24 pages long. It's $2.99. It's not that big of a thing. But we were really struggling, the editor and I, what was missing, and I had missed a crucial part of that talk from President Nelson, the choice part. Israel is letting God prevail, but we get to choose into that. In the booklet, I talk about David and Goliath, and I really wanted to write this booklet so teenagers would want to read it, because teenagers have Goliaths in front of them all the time. I love the story of David, because he was not what everyone thought of as the warrior king. He was the guy in the field they almost forgot about. He didn't go to CrossFit. And when they asked him to fight Goliath, he's like, totally, me and God, we got this. Because he had been out in the field doing his stewardship assignment. If you know me and you follow me, you know I love that word. And what he had learned in fighting off the bears and the lions was how to deal with scary things and take down Goliaths in his life. And he went forward to say, me, I got this. And they tried to put on him armor. They were like, listen, you don't even look like the part. Have you been on Pinterest? There's a whole pattern. You got to print it off and go to Hobby Lobby and get this. And he's like, no, that's not how I fly. I use leather and these rocks in my bag, and I'm wearing my leggings. No, probably not leggings. I mean comfort fit, right? If you're going to take down a Goliath. And he had that bag of stones, nothing fancy. Don't you love that God lets us use what we've got? He did this to the brother of Jared too. He wasn't like, listen, I need you to invent electricity and a generator and a plug and a light switch. He was like, what do you got? Brother Jared, who also had a weird name. I think we're cousins. Me and Mahan, right? I'm always like Cameron's mom, Brooklyn's mom, just don't even try it, you know? Brother of Jared was like, I got rocks. And God's like, I got that. I'll touch that. I'll consecrate that offering. As you consider what I was considering in the struggle in finishing this booklet was that I had forgotten the choice part. We have to choose into this all the time. I just had someone message me on social media about how I claim blessings. In my patriarchal blessing, I was told I'd be a mother in Zion. Until one day, doctor said, you will never have children. I have a heart condition, I have lupus, and they said children aren't possible. And I was like, I got a blessing, and it says, no. In my head, I said that. But for 7 years, I had to keep claiming the blessing. I didn't know how I'd become a mother, but I know God kept his promises. And Elder Holland has said, in this life or the next, broken bones can heal, and broken minds can heal. He also says, do not vote against the preciousness of life by ending it. And if Elder Holland says it, I believe it. So I want to testify to you that for 7 years, I claimed that blessing. I chose to let God prevail in the days where I was still not pregnant and I was still sick. And I could tell you hours of examples, some of which were calling my faith friends on the hard days. Some of them were going to my sacred grove to plead with God. Some of them were going to people that had plan Bs to help me with hope. But the day that 10-pound baby came 2 weeks early, you guys, seriously. Everyone's like, you have lupus, right? He had so much black hair and cry like a man. Like this. Like that's how he would cry. I did not know newborn babies should not be this big. Okay? At his 2 week, he was 13 pounds. I didn't know till my daughter was born 6 years later that the size on the clothes matches the age. That's so creative. Like, I don't even have to guess. 3 to 6 months. Oh, she's 5 months. Oh, these are the clothes. I thought 3 to 6 months was 3 days later after they were born. He's 6'7" now. Everyone's like, oh dear, he'll slow down. Never. But that moment, friends, when he was handed to me, I had 7 years of pain and pleading and questioning wash away. I'm going to be really vulnerable with you. I have things in my life right now that are not yet resolved, that I'm still claiming, but those blessings haven't come. And I know you do too. So I'm going to invite you to choose to let God prevail. What stones in your bag do you need today to take down your Goliath? I hope that something that has been shared today by me, by the music, by the workshops, allow you to add to your bag of stones. I pray and testify that you and I are works in progress, and sometimes that means we need updates. And when the updates happen on my phone, I have to turn it off. I give you full permission to be still and know that I am, so that those uploads and updates can happen in God's timing. You have full permission to belong in this community of Christ. You are needed. You are not extra. And I hope you're different than me. I hope we make more space for the faith spectrums that we're all going to be called to walk through. Maybe this week you weren't triggered, but there will come a day, we've been told. So please text your faith friends today and say, on those hard days, I will SOS you, and you can SOS me. And together we can become. You are more than enough for what is to come. Do not believe Satan, the father of all lies, that is jealous of your body, your family, and your faith. He is jealous and scared of you, especially of women of Zion, because your influence is grand and eternal. What you do today matters, and when only heaven witnesses it, it will be shouted from the rooftops someday. So those neighbors you help, that canning you do, that smile you give, that forgiveness you offer, heaven knows. And I leave that with you in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.